Hello, everyone. Welcome to TechviCast. I'm Daniel, your host for today's episode and Chief Innovation Officer at DZH International. I work with banks and financial institutions across Asia on trading executions, product innovation, digital transformation, and AI adoptions. On this show, we talk about what it really takes to get AI into real products and today into a real bank. This episode is a little bit different. It's less of an interview, but more like a conversations about implementation, what works, what breaks, and what banks tend to underestimate. And joining me today is Anthony Osborne. Anthony has spent more than 30 years leading complex transformations programs across banking, telecoms, and defense. And he has worked on major delivery initiatives across APAC. He was also recognized as a Professional Services Leader of the Year in Finance at the 2025 Fluxx Awards. Anthony, welcome. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Daniel.
Okay, First start, Anthony, you've spent a big part of your career on the delivery side of banking technology across major core banking platforms and different markets. So just to start, can you tell us a bit about your journey and what delivering banking solutions actually means in the real world?
So it's been a long time. So I've been in Asia itself now for a bit over 14 years, nearly 16 years, I guess. And during that period of time, I've actually more transitioned from the traditional delivery role, which is implementing a product, and that's basically about it. You don't look too much wider, to a transformation role, which means that you're now not just looking at the vendor side and the product side, but actually working with the different organizations and different stakeholders in making sure that when you're implementing, you're actually looking wider. So that strategy, it's how the operations work, making sure governance and controls are in place. And by doing that, I've found, and I hope my customers have found as well, that they've actually been more successful and got more value out of the actual implementation. Too long we were only thinking about the software going into the product and not thinking about how the wider organizations were impacted, and banks especially, because there's so many different stakeholder groups in there. To me, the delivery transformation change has become more around, making sure that everyone is involved and not after the fact, but during the fact. So as you're doing these things, you're talking about, what do I see? You need to clarify what the outcomes are and make sure that things are measurable when it comes to, what benefits somebody is trying to implement. The biggest challenge still is going to be managing legacy complexity, and we'll talk a lot more about that as we go with AI.
Yes.
But, working out, what scope trade-offs need to be made. How do you manage the risks? How do you make sure operations are there? Have the systems been ready? Those sort of things. It's where I believe we've become more mature in the market, whereas before everyone just did their piece and walked away. And I think we saw a lot less happy customers, let's put it that way. So.
Yeah. That is very spot on. And, a lot of people hear transformation and think of technology immediately, but actually, what you're describing is much broader than that. It's not just technology, not just software. It's about governance. It's about operation as well. Right. At what point in your career did you realize that delivery was, more about just technology?
Unhappy customers. People saying, I spent all this money and I got what? Right? It wasn't a part of their business. And today, to be honest, I still see that as well. If you don't have a proper business case put together, which brings all the stakeholders together, then how's that going to work? I've been lucky enough to work on really successful programs and also unsuccessful ones. And they both have different things you learn from them. But one of the successful ones was only successful when they brought a proper program manager in, somebody who sat at the top of the tree and then got every single stakeholder together and made us all work together as a team. All right. And my mantra is one team, one goal. And then I was able to see at the same time, because I was managing a region and I had another project where the client didn't do that. And each one of the different streams worked in complete isolation. One bank is now live and is hitting milestones left, right, and centre with, being profitable as a greenfield digital bank. Another one is now looking at transitioning to a completely different platform after 3 years worth of investment. It just shows what the difference is, right? So one is successful and the other one, they're about to go back through a completely new transformation program without achieving their original goals. So, that makes a huge difference. And I think that is the maturity piece. And I'm glad to say I think Asia is one of the areas which is actually probably better at doing that than others. I think that's more because Asia is a younger demographic, and therefore you're more interested in working together and not bringing the baggage of the past, not like old people like me.
Yes. I think the model and legacy is much smaller than, so actually when, you work with a lot of banks in the regions, right? When a bank says it wants to transform, as a service provider, right? What does the work on the ground actually look like?
Yeah. Look, they all look very similar until you start to pull things apart. All right. So they've all got the idea. You want to transform the bank. Okay, what does that mean? What are you trying to transform? Are you going to try and transform retail, corporate? Are you trying to do everything at once? And that is a problem as well. You've got to control that boil the ocean approach. But a lot of the biggest differences are the organizational traits. So how that organization looks. So culture is a massive challenge. And I'm not talking about culture, the difference between Vietnam and Singapore, for instance. I'm talking about the organizational culture. So if you've got a culture where each part of the organization works as an individual silo and not together, like I was explaining before with the failed implementation, you've got challenges there. You're not going to be successful in the way that is, meeting the deadlines and budget constraints and the scope constraints and all that sort of stuff in a harmonious manner, right? It's not always going to be harmony, but at least if you're working together, you can fix problems. You need to work together as part of the same team. And again, if I see an organization like that at the beginning, and I have tried in the past, it doesn't always work, but to highlight that, it's a red flag, right? You know that this is going to be a challenge. How do you fix that? Some of the things are suggesting to bring in a program manager from outside, or making sure that, you get the right sponsorship. You need to make sure, and I'm pretty sure you've seen this too, Daniel, if you don't have sponsorship at the top level of that organization, it doesn't necessarily have to be the CEO, but it's always helpful. But if they're the sponsor, they're the ones who are going to drive the decisioning and how people will do it. But if you have a sponsor who really doesn't have much presence within the organization, it makes it very difficult to get their peers, people to come and work with you.
Yes, pulling people together to organize different teams, this kind of thing. So because of our outside world, people just think about transformation like system replacement. I have a system, I got to replace it to transform it, right? But in practice, it's like sponsorship, organizational exercise where you literally have to organize your teams, right, with your service provider, with your internal teams, right? So there's a lot of work to be done, right? So in your opinions, where do banks usually underestimate the effort most?
Everywhere? No, I'm kidding. It's more along the lines of it's how much governance is required, and it's not trying to talk about having individual reporting and everything else, but making sure you've got a good, strong platform in there, so steering committees, all that sort of stuff. Data is probably the area that everyone's sort of our data is fantastic. Okay, how long you've had this been collected for? Regulatory organizations, some countries have 7-year requirements, some have 10-year requirements. Some people have got a legacy system that might have been sitting there for 30 to 40 years, if not longer. So there's a lot of information in there. So if you don't have clean data, then you can't start the migration. And unfortunately, I've always seen that clients of mine seem to push migration to one of the last things to talk about. But to me, it's something that has to happen in parallel with what you're going to do. Because product people are really good at explaining what sort of stuff they want in their products. You do need to control the enthusiasm, because some customers of mine have being told you can do all these things and then come back 2 days later with 3 pages worth of requirements, and each line is a new requirement. It's like, okay, what's important? Like that harness the enthusiasm and get them to come up with a smart subset of requirements to start with so that you can get somewhere, pilot things properly. But you need to be talking about migration and then at the same time testing, because you need these organizations to be built as you're going, because they don't just appear overnight. And your testing will also drive, how you're doing requirements and also how you measure the performance of the different systems in place. What used to be the longest and difficult part was around the core banking component itself, setting that up. With the newer cores like Thought Machines, Vault and 10x and all those sort of things, they are no longer the longest pole in the tent. Like, they don't take the longest time to put together. It's integration. And that's another area where people saying, we're already integrated everything. Like, you're bringing in something brand new, which systems you're replacing, all those sort of things. That's a big problem. And the other one is enterprise architecture. I'm just throwing too many things out there, but all these sort of items need to come together because they define your scope, and they need to be done as part of a strategy and a plan, a program plan that you put together before you start. And if you don't have them together, then how do you help your sponsors understand, how much time is really required, how much is it going to cost, and also to prioritize, right? Trying to do it all at once doesn't usually work. I have seen it work, but that was amazing. And I think as well it burned out a lot of people. So I would rather see smart programming around, which segment. Is it retail? Is it corporate? Is it a segment in retail, like deposits, for instance, or is it a product only? Those sort of things. So you can test it and get those wins in as early as possible.
Yeah, that's very insightful. And based on my experience, this is it's very important to have a good coordination between different teams and different systems, and to be able to to handle the different type of requests from product teams. Prioritize the requirements and the phases accordingly to be able to integrate, to be able to develop and launch new platforms. Right, like like I mentioned, we need to harness the enthusiasms from the product teams, for example. You mentioned something that very aligned with what I noticed. Right, regulations in different countries, right, across different markets. Actually, the regulation is actually similar, more similar than most people expect, right? But the bigger differentiator here between different regulators is actually the data sovereignty.
Yeah.
So you deliver across a lot of market and then a lot of different platforms, right? Is it what you've seen as well, right?
Yes and no. If you'd asked me the same question no more than 2 years ago, I was just thinking about this before. It was a lot harder, and part of that was because the big cloud providers didn't exist in all the larger locations, right? And also regulators didn't understand what was going on with data and how things would work. But so what's happened now is the regulators, as you said, they're a lot closer than you think. And because of that, so Malaysia, for instance, might feel that having data hosted in Singapore is okay now because they have aligned. But also Indonesia, which has the need for the data to be held locally, there was no options before. So everything was stuck. And then suddenly Google went in there and put in their cloud. And then now you've also got AWS, and I'm expecting, say, Oracle and Microsoft are the same. So those components have made a huge difference. And I think because of that, it's also reduced one of those impacts that happen to be always around how you planned. Everyone before was putting everything on-prem. Whilst that's happening again in some respects because of cost, but it's not now it's not the thing that will stop you from actually deciding to go into the cloud. And the other one is SaaS, obviously, and then again, there's different regulations there which keep changing on
Yes,
a daily
yes,
basis.
yes.
But maybe stay away from those ones.
Mm,
I think the biggest issue in between the different regulators is the maturity of bringing in new tools and how you use them and how they change as well. I had a client where we started with a SaaS implementation, but by the end of the actual project, we had to move them into a self-hosted cloud solution because the application or the product itself had gone from being a tier 4 sort of product to a tier 1, just through sheer volume of numbers, but also capability that was required. So because of that, you had those sort of changes as well. And these transformation projects take years, right? So what
yes,
happens?
yes.
Regulators like to change things. So you've got to be able to adapt to that as well. So yeah, that's definitely
Yes.
an
Yeah, so
interesting.
it's very interesting. Actually, from what I see, that the difference is not actually always about the regulation itself, but how the market interprets and operates around it. Like a few years back, everything's on cloud, and some recently there's a trend of going back on prem. There's you're moving data. A lot of Malaysia's can host data in Singapore because they have a list like through it, for example. Yeah, so it's just how the market interprets and operates around these factors.
And I think the other one is that as you bring in new products, new financial products as well, not just new software products, but the actual financial products themselves, you need to have a customer who's willing to go and speak to the actual regulator. Because if you're trying to come up with something that's innovative and someone's going, oh, no, you can't do it this way or you can't do it that way because the regulator says no, why does the regulator say no? Ask that question. And I think it is a challenge to do that, to get people to want to talk to the regulators. But most of the regulators, when you speak to them, go, oh, wow, we hadn't thought of that. And then come back and go, yeah, we'll do it this way. But they will work with you. Most regulators are looking to not stop business. They want to support it, but they want to put some guardrails around it. So utilize that. And they can give you some ideas. They can give us ideas too as vendors. What should we be doing? But yeah, that's the other one I think is that you've got to be willing to go and work with the regulator as well. A transformation of a bank is not a small task, and it will obviously have other questions being asked. And regulators, especially if you're talking about some of the bigger banks, the tier 1s and the tier 2s, they have to go to the regulator to get approval to make these changes in the first place. So whilst the vendor should not go with them, most of the regulators don't want that, but they need to, the client or the organization itself needs to know what it can talk about and then to have that conversation and do that early. Don't surprise a regulator because they're a government, right? They take a long time to think about that.
Yes, that's right. Have you ever seen some markets or country where the regulators or regulation was manageable, but the delivery environment was like the harder part?
Actually, I think, yes, I have seen. And the reason I just took a bit of time to think about that is more to do with, I had two different banks at the same time. One was willing to go and work with the regulator and the other one wasn't. And the one that worked with the regulator became, it was a lot easier, things moved faster and all those sort of things, whereas the other one kept bringing up new complexities to add, which meant that the product itself became more and more complex, which meant required more compute power, which is more costly, but also more complex meant more risk. Therefore, things would not run so well. So yeah, it's quite funny if they're both in the same jurisdiction and one will but one won't. Why?
I see.
I think that's one of the things that which makes working in Asia so much more fun, is because I get to see all the different jurisdictions and see also the way.
Yes. But you talked about this Asia, or particularly in Southeast Asia, right? I've been looking the past 2 years on the AI readiness across Southeast Asia, right? So I can see there's a big gap between how ready the organizations think they are and how ready they actually are. So a lot of banks are moving in the right directions, but only a small numbers of banks or organizations are truly AI first today. Is that the same thing that you see in the past years? And do you think when a an organization says that they are AI ready, what signals tell you that it's real?
Yeah, look, again, this is something I've been thinking about. I've been around a long time. So I actually think I've seen, this is my third generation of technology come through. So I was there when people started using something called a personal computer in the office. I got to see that happen. And our people had to go from handwritten notebooks and ledgers and stuff to start moving it online. And then when office automation started to come in, when you're talking about, the use of Office itself or Lotus Notes, it's an older one again. But all these sort of things, each time there was this, are they ready type piece, right? So people had
Yes.
had to learn how to type, had to learn how to use email instead of, handwriting something, those sort of things. Again, with AI, I think it's another jump, and it's a fairly significant one. The internet was another one that's been there for a long time, but as part of business, it's not been there. So being able to do this, for instance, is, being able to have a video conference and do it easily is a massive change. It's only not before COVID, this is not as easy to do as it is now. All right, there's a whole lot of changes that happen, but with AI, it's as you said, are they ready? A lot of banks say they are. They're doing a lot of pilots. There's a lot of innovation in their different teams around the place. Lots of conversations with vendors and experts and consulting organizations, and definitely a lot of senior interest. All the big banks are talking about what they're going to do, but a lot of the POCs don't go out of the POC stage. And then the other one is, what are they using AI for? Google did a survey of about, I'm not sure how many people they surveyed, but there was 63% of the leaders they went to have already moved generative AI into production. But there are another 35% who are still evaluating. Now, I think those numbers are high, right? Because what I'm going to ask the question is, what are they using generative AI for? Is it at the front end, like is it at the conversational tools, like
layers,
replacing bots and all those sort of things? Is that what they're using it for? Or are they using it internally to do more, around how they maintain their entire network and their products and everything else, generate reports, all those sort of things that, that AI can actually do in a smarter way, and also take load off people. Are they using it for that? I think we need, and I'm going to talk about this again later, but AI itself, once it starts we stopped calling it AI and just talk about it being a part of the products and being a part of the operations and everything else, that's when, we've actually got somewhere. At the moment, it looks really shiny. It's new. It's in demos and everything else. How do you get to the next part? I think we talked about when is a business ready for it, right? They need to understand the governance side of things. Privacy is massive, right? How data is shared around not just the IP internally, but also and externally, but also how they share our own data, because that will be as part of the data set used by the different tools. But how do you protect that? Again, people are trying to hack everywhere at the moment. AI is helping them hack. How do you stop that? It's a never-ending cycle. Ownership, and then the capability to change as well. All these things will determine whether or not an organization is ready. And I think a lot of times they write a strategy paper, but don't take all that into account. And then look, we're in an area which is a very ambitious region, and obviously the uptake on AI is hugely ambitious as well. So, but we need to make sure that people understand what that looks like. And that's where, people like yourself and myself, Daniel, can help in guiding our clients and, people are asking for advice, how they should be doing these things and what they should be thinking about.
Yeah, actually, to me, the real signals is not about enthusiasms of adopting AI. It's more like operational maturity.
Yeah, and
it's about it.
If you're already mature in the operation space, adding in AI adding as another member or another part of your organization will actually be a lot easier. if you've got an immature organization operationally today, AI is not going to fix that. It's going to make it look worse, actually. So
Yeah. Um, Actually, since last year, we have been talking about some real AI outcomes in banking, right? In Singapore, for example, DBS is one of the obvious example at scale. And, other banks or other financial institutions, I can see that they're adopting in their operation about things like AI in fraud detection, AML, KYC, or even for internal productivity, right? So actually, this is what we very lined up with what we just discussed about, right? But do you think that internal productivity or operation is easier to scale than customer-facing AI?
No. And an easy reason why I say that is doing it for the customers. Customers are already used to using bots and they're already used to getting advice. So what you're doing is you're making that better. You're actually improving the customer-facing piece, and you don't actually ask the customer for their advice on whether or not they like it or not until after the event. So you've already done that. Internally, one thing is change. People are resistant to change. There is a lot of fear out there that people are going to lose jobs because of AI. I think it's not going to be let or lose jobs. Their job will change, and hopefully for the better. Right? If you don't have to generate that report every morning for your boss that takes an hour and a half to 2 hours because it's already there for you, you can go focus on something else. I'm pretty sure you're going to be happier. If you don't have to go and analyze every single loan request that comes through to see whether or not it should be approved or not, because you've already got a report saying these are the ones I've got to look at, right? Those sort of things will make life a lot easier and make you as your job more efficient because you're now focusing on things that you should be focusing on. And I think that to me is positive, but it's how do you get over that resistance to change that's going to be the problem internally. And I think when you need to get some runs on the board when you're implementing a new solution that includes an AI machine learning component that proves that this is the case, right? There are going to be people that lose jobs, but hopefully it's not, the apocalypse that a number of people are talking about. So.
Yes, let's talk about data. We talk about different type of architectures that we adopted within the banks, cloud native, on-prem, hybrid, pros and cons, and also like localized or built from scratch, right? So across the ASEAN, what I see that the biggest priorities right now seems to be data quality, data management, and data governance. Right. So you also mentioned about to be AI ready, data management must be on the top of the list, right? What do banks or organizations most often underestimate when they start, manage the data?
Yeah. How many systems do they have? Let's say there's 5. Now,
right.
Banking has never had a common data model structure. Telcos have had it for decades. And one of the original areas I worked in was in telecommunications, and I worked in data there where the numbers that we were talking about back in the mid-2000s, 20 terabytes of data a day for the third largest telco in Australia, right? We're not talking about big businesses here, but they were generating that much data every day. But every single system was using the same data model. Now, in financial services, we've never done that, which will mean that you're going to have 4 or 5 systems that you're going to be using data from to actually create a model that you'll use for your AI and machine learning tools that are all going to have different formats. So firstly, you've got to transform that after you've done your data cleansing. So again, how old is the system? In some systems, originally, you could put in whatever data you wanted to. There was all free text. Now, that's not useful for machine learning or anything else because it doesn't have any structure to it. So how do you go through that? How do you find all those things? So to me, a lot of organizations underestimate how much effort there's going to be to, 1, cleanse the data, then 2, transform it into a usable format, and where you're going to hold it. So you're going to have to create a brand new data store. And some people are going to complain, I've got all these data marts and everything else around the place. If you get this right, you don't need to have all the rest of those things. All you need to do is have the feeds coming through with a transformation layer in place, and then you're in one location, you've got all this data. You're going to be able to create new reports that you've never thought of before. You're going to be able to get new insights that you've never expected. The great thing with machine learning is that it will go off and find things out that you never even considered in the first place. And therefore you will get more benefits. But at the same time, with great power, there comes great responsibility, and you need to make sure that you are not letting the machines run the whole process. There needs to be someone in there, and that's where the new roles come in place, like data scientists in some respects, but there's going to be data custodians who have now got more responsibility around ensuring that all works. And I think that's the other part that people underestimate, is how much governance needs to be put around that. Again, we talked about privacy before. How do you protect it? All those sort of things. What data needs to be anonymized so you can actually use that data across the place. And there is also going to be the issue with data sovereignty. If you have to move data across borders, what data can and what data can't, there are still rules around that too you're going to take into play. So yeah, it's going to be cleanliness, format, and governance. I think are the three major ones I can think of, and also responsibility, as in the roles around that too. So there you go. There's four for data alone. And I think that, as you said, people really will underestimate that, and still do. And they have always underestimated how much data is driving business.
Yes. Yeah. It's surprisingly, what you share is also very similar to what I was recently told by my friends. There's this conundrum I was shared. Actually, a lot of people think that AI can speed up the delivery speed of a project. But if you want to harness the AI, you need a very good data. If you want to have a good data, you need to have a lot of governance, management, cleanup, everything. And on top of that, for the AI, you also need to have AI governance, AI validation, etc. Right? So the conundrum here is that is AI really can speed up delivery, or adding all this additional governance validation can actually make the go live timeline, the go live date actually take longer. What's your opinion on this?
It will take longer if you don't have a strategy in place, right? That takes it all up front. Because if you're learning as you go, what's going to happen? Each time you go forward, you're going to have the same, I've got to go back and redo these again. You need to get that. You need to spend probably more time planning up front. And I've always been a big advocate for more time spent on planning before you start than during the project, because the more you plan, the more you can probably to minimize the impact of different dependencies and everything else. The AI dependencies, though, are a lot more prevalent and impactful than the normal delivery ones that we've seen in the past, right? So if you don't have your governance in place, if you don't have your data strategy in place, all those sort of things, you are going to slow down, right? Because you're going to go back each time and start again. It's a really good thought, Daniel. But it's not new. That's the thing. This is not driven by AI. This has been common sense forever, right? If you go and talk to a builder who's been building houses forever, they will tell you that they will have everything documented up front. So they have the plans done. They have a bill of materials, everything else is organized. They have what services they need. They have all that planned out before they start, right? We in technology have never done that.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth and reworks to be done, on the control of the data and AI to make it happen. Right. So, in your opinion, right now in the markets, where do you see the biggest time savings today when adopting AI?
I had a customer do a proof of concept late last year. And it was run by a gentleman who told me that he was an AI skeptic. And anyway, he was told by his boss he needed to try AI. Okay, let's do it. So they had a 6-week program of work that they had to do, which was around defining requirements and designing a new financial product. They complete that in 4, maybe 5 4-hour sessions. Now, what the AI tool was able to do is I would say, this is what I want it to look like, and then it'll come back and suggest other things. And then they would go, no, don't like that, don't like they were able to on the fly actually design and gather and align the requirements without having to go through the usual process, which is to document everything, get it to be reviewed, and then you have another meeting and go through these processes all over and over again. So very iterative. This was very collaborative, and it was actually done in real time. This person obviously no longer a skeptic around this. I think that's an area, like being able to create new financial products is one thing, but also to be able to, the operational processes, to move them faster. I think those changes will become more and more mainstream. Like, people won't even talk about it because it will just happen. And the other one, obviously, I think is reporting. Bringing data in from all these different data sets. Today we've got really cool reporting tools, and we've been using them for years, but they still take forever to run the reports, right? And if it, end of day for a banking system, I've got some banks who are running end of days, they tell me about, which are taking nearly 12 hours using a legacy system, right? Now, how do you run your reports and everything else and have your end of day finished before you start your next business day? By adding in tools around AI and everything else, maybe you can extract the data, get that delivered, and then that can do everything it needs to and take the pressure off the legacy system so that it can finish its other pieces early, and then you've got all this other information done as well. Those sort of things, I think, is going to make things go a lot faster. And they also have real benefits because you're actually reducing effort and you can measure it really easily. So, if it took 4 hours to do one report before and now it's taking 30 minutes, that's an easy one. But if you're taking 2.5, say 3 days, and instead of taking 25, 30 days to create a requirement spec that's ready to be designed and potentially even developed, as a POC, that's massive, right?
Yeah. So actually, to me, from what you say, share with us. Actually, the AI can speed up a lot of things so long, the business use case appear. The users know exactly what they want to achieve, and the problem statement is be crystal clear. It's where the AI can be very helpful in terms of collaboration, report, to summarize the meetings and come up with all the proper analysis, and then come to the execution and development phase, right? Oh well, let's put AI to one side first and talk about transformation in general, right? So the word transformation. When a bank's programs or organizations' strategies start to go off tracks, right? So in their transformation, what usually sits at the heart of the problem? Is it the technology? Is it the data governance, or some other combination? Sorry, can I rephrase the question again? So let's put AI at one side, and let's talk about transformation. The words transformation in banks and financial institutions or other organizations, right? When they have this transformation strategy, start to go off tracks, right? So what usually sits at the heart of the problem? Is it the technology? Is it the data governance, or some other combination of all of that?
I actually think it's even more fundamental. It's a lack of clarity on what you're trying to achieve, right? So if you don't have a clear objective or objectives for what you're trying to achieve with the transformation, if it's a one-off line, which is we're going to transform the bank, that really doesn't tell you what you're trying to achieve. So it's getting the scope and the objectives and or the mission defined well. And if you get that, then you've actually things like data and all, and the governance and the stakeholder mix and everything else, they all start to come very clear. The data quality is always going to be an issue, right? So that is something you need to plan for. So you should know that as part of your actual original strategy. Getting a business case that's signed off, that's measurable, right? Again, people just saying we're going to transform. How do you know you've achieved that, right? And a transformation is not something that's done overnight. I think I went to a kickoff for a transformation program last year, and I'm sitting at the end of the table with a whole lot of the stakeholders from the bank, and the chair of the steering committee walks in and goes, "Yep, we're going to do a transformation. It's going to take 10 years." And we're all looking at each other going, "What?" Like, you got to think about it. That's a long time, right? And in that period of time, obviously the scope will adjust itself to whatever is happening in the market and everything else. But if you don't have a really clear objective of what you're trying to achieve, you can get lost, and you may not find out you're lost until 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 years down the track, right? And again, I have seen this with a customer, which blew my mind. Really smart, technically savvy organization, but after about 3 years of doing an implementation, they didn't have a business case. And we're like, how did you get all this signed off, right? We were just a small part of it. But if you don't know where you're going to get to, how do you get there? And I think that's the key, the first one. And the other one is sponsorship. If you don't have the right people sponsoring your program, you're going to get lost. And again, if you go to you work with risk as well, right? So it's a different organization to the guys who do the financial side of things. So when you're talking about the CFO office and everything else, you've got different requirements around data. Okay. Now, if I turn around and tell you that the finance guys say they only want it to be in this format, and you go, no, it's got to be in this form. Those sort of conversations will become, they go around and around in circles and go nowhere, and you get lost. You need a sponsor who's going to go, no, this is what it is, right? And have that power. And, having really well-defined business case, scope, and all those sort of things with excellent sponsorship, you will be successful. Even with legacy systems and bad data and everything else, because those people will know, right? And that's what will change things. And that's whether it's a transformation project in a bank or whether it's another project in a telco, it makes a difference. It's common.
Yes. Actually, that's very useful because people often blame the platform itself for the failure, but it's a root cause more often around the ownership or the scope of works, the large scope, right? And that is cause the failure or the transformation. But let's imagine if you add in AI into the mix, right? Do you think the same problem will get amplified and even new issue show up?
I actually think it will get amplified faster. I think because of AI, you will see these problems earlier. Now, that's a part of the fact that we talked about before, why, with AI making things more efficient and effective, these problems will surface very quickly. But they also probably be bigger. Now, they'll be bigger because you might have thought, well, I'm a lot further along and therefore I've made a commitment that I'm going to launch, or you have actually launched something. And then you go, oh, we didn't realize these things are going to be a problem, right? I think that's one of the issues was going to come out of it. And the other one is getting the wrong people involved, right? If you purely have data scientists and AI experts are the only ones working on this, you're not going to get a technology solution. You're going to get a technology solution, not a business solution, right? The whole reason we do these things is to make the business more effective and more efficient and therefore more successful. I don't know any organizations where the technology of a bank or a company that is not about making money out of technology makes money, right? They got to realize where the money comes from, and it comes from the business. So you need to make sure that you have these people in there. And that to me is, why we need to make sure that as part of, again, the strategy and everything else, you've got those stakeholders together. It keeps coming back to the same thing. But yeah, you're right. It will be amplified, but you will see it faster.
Yes, that's a very strong point. It may amplify faster, and it is very important to have a shared accountability between different stakeholders, right? And who do you think should have the final sign-off in practice before launching a platform?
That's why you need a good sponsor, all right? To me, it should be the person is the ultimately responsible for whatever that launch is, right? If you're talking in a retail bank, maybe it's the head of retail, maybe it's the head of lending. If it's a risk system, again, it's the CRO, right? The chief risk officer who will make that call. You need to make sure that it's those people, but they need input from all the different teams, right? So technology is one, but you've also got your governance and your compliance teams, your legal teams. You've got marketing or communications if it's going to be externally facing. You've got operations as well, and also the business itself. The people who are actually, the people sitting there and actually pushing the lending product to people and everything else. They need to be able to sign off, and potentially the people in the branch, right? They need to all have these inputs, and then that person at the top of the tree makes the decision on whether or not they're going to go. And that it needs to be a business person. Anytime a technology team is the one that signs off on the launch, usually you find out that people won't use the tool. They won't use it. It won't get pushed because they didn't have any input. And then people get upset. Well, we spent all this time and money on something. Well, you need to do it together, right? And I think, again, always get the business involved. Without them, why are we doing this, right?
Right. Yeah, that's very insightful information. Across Southeast Asia, you notice the markets are moving very fast, right? Some markets moving very fast, some markets are moving at a slower speed. But but in terms of readiness, in terms of regulation, and in what bank can realistically implement, with the difference across different jurisdictions, different countries, how do you approach it when coming to like building a platform, building a systems? Do you build based on the so-called strictest regime and then localize it, or you just go by market and market? And can you share with us as well how much of that decision ultimately comes back to the data sovereignty?
Look, I think looking for the most regulated, the most strict regulations is probably a really good approach, right? You can come up with a layered model, right? So that you build a platform. So if you're only delivering to one jurisdiction, obviously it's an easier answer. But if you're, let's say you pick a regional bank, let's say CIMB, for instance, right? They're all throughout Asia, right? They're in so many different, I think it's 8 different countries. Octo, that's right, yeah. So obviously they've got 8 different regulatory requirements to meet. Now, if you've got 8 different systems, then that doesn't help too much either. So to me, I think come up with a global platform that sort of meets most things. Then maybe you've got another layer which is more regional, which could be by that country. So you've got the different nuances around that. So if you have to maintain from a global perspective, you're maintaining one level, then you go up to the next one, which is the regional level. And so therefore you're only going to then change those regions which are impacted. And then you can still have a local level above that. So maybe within different parts of the country, you might have other little nuances that you're not aware of. In the US, each state has different taxes and everything else. So that makes things even more difficult, right? So how do you handle that? And I think to me, it's that layering. And most of the modern cores, including a lot of the legacy cores, do provide for that already, right? And if you're a vendor, you want to try and create maybe the 2 levels up front that you maintain, and then the 3rd level, which is the local one, which you can then hand over to the bank itself to handle, right? So that they can then turn it into their system and have their requirements. Because don't forget, it's not just the regulators' requirements, it's the compliance team within each organization as well who've got to have an input. So they like to make things even more fun. So as a vendor, that's where, I have sat there and gone, oh, wow, okay, you've done it completely. And we talked about it before, right? We have 2 different banks in the same jurisdiction. One will talk to the regulator, the other one won't. You're going to have 2 different sets of rules that they're going to use. So that to me is one way of doing it. And also maybe language is another one. So you've got to look at all those sort of things too. But again, modern systems should be able to handle that. It's just AI actually will make that a lot easier, which is great. But it's, again, how do you do that? And I think the layering approach is the best way for me. And it's worked because it's been going for years, right? It's not something new. That's just something that's been happening?
Yes. This is what we also adopting here. To have different layers, but the most important as a leaders in the industry is to be able to make the decision where the line is between each of the layers. Where do we set as a global standardization, and where is we should put as a local customization? So I think it's come to practice, experience as well. Yeah. To understand about the market and to understand about culture, the people in each of the market as well, right? So yeah, come to a bit about the people, right? So we have talked about AI readiness and data and architecture, right? But let's talk about people. I'm a very big believer of resource fluidity, right? To be able to move strong people across different initiatives and locking expertise, instead of locking them into different silos, right? So when AI talent is very limited and you have to deliver across different markets, so what kind of capabilities the buying teams actually need to build, so that the AI capability is not too dependent on the small number of specialists, especially now, the AI talent is very limited. And, with does that kind of fluidity in terms of resource strengthen the delivery, or, it's like spreading the risk of key people, become too thin?
All valid points, and I'll try to answer. Look, one of the things is it's people, right? The bottleneck is going to be people, and it's not about just AI talent either. It's whether you can get AI and data literacy into the organization. So, you've got to get your own internal business up to speed and be able to want to be a part of the journey. And I've seen lots of different times where people are so resistant to change that, you sit there and you just can't believe that they don't see why this is a benefit. AI is, again, another one of these things. Oh, no, it's going to take my job. It's not. How do you adapt to it, and how do you use it so that you have a better job, right? So that's one part of it. I know what's interesting, there's a study that MIT did recently, and they went out to about 24,000 people and 30 different countries and asked them how they would see AI is going to impact them. And what they found is that, let's say they call it the formal labor markets. Let's just say the Western world, in a lot of respect, like the older countries who have been in business forever and a day, and everyone's been in business forever and a day, but the ones with the really structured old style banking and everything else, they feel like it's going to be harder to actually adopt to AI versus somewhere like Southeast Asia, where they see it as an opportunity. All right. So I think that's a great thing to harness when it comes to people, is that people see it as an opportunity to actually be able to improve themselves, but also, to be hopefully get more out of their job, right? Not just turn up to work every day. So to me, it's definitely an opportunity. There are some areas in Southeast Asia we might see it as a threat, though, right? Some of the more, traditional countries. I don't think Singapore's one. I'm definitely sure Australia is one, by the way. But they anywhere that's going to want to adopt will be good at this sort of stuff. The thing is about reskilling their team, right? So it's not just the tech team. You've got to get your business team. We were talking about risk, compliance, operations. Compliance is now going to have more input than they've ever had before, which is, to me, a bit of a scary thing, because they're going to be able to stop you a lot easier. But data privacy is huge, right? GDPR, I don't even know if it's actually at a level which actually handles AI enough yet, right? Which is saying something, considering that's the most restrictive data privacy laws in the world. And then you've also got, the other parts of it with the regulators are worried. We've been seeing, the US stopping different models coming in and out all the time. Well, it's going to happen in other places. A regulator's going to tell a bank, you are not allowed to use that model, right? So are you not allowed to use whatever the latest opus is from Anthropic or whatever it is? So those sort of things are going to come into play as well. And I think the other one is, which is a concern, and it's becoming a one that I'm reading about more and more often, is the lack of people hiring juniors. They're not hiring people at entry-level positions because, AI will do that. If you don't hire these people now, how are you going to have in 5 to 10 years the people you need to do the next level of job, or the one after that, the one where you need to have knowledge and experience, right? So you bring on these graduates and entry-level roles, everything else, to get them to be a part of this AI journey, to get in there and to be learning how to use that and to be able to influence it as well. Because, people who've been doing this a long time have got baggage where they're not going to want to change certain things, where someone else might come and go, well, why don't you just step that to here and give that to an AI tool to go off and run that process. And when we can go and check it out, they might not think of that. They'll bring in fresh ideas. And I think it is a risk that we will not be hiring graduates and other people to go into entry-level positions that in 10 years' time, people are going to go, what are we doing? Who's going to take this on? Do I have to stay for another 5 years whilst we train somebody? Those sort of things.
That's a very great point. When you put it about hiring juniors or the balance between the number of generalists, that's what I actually say, generalists and specialists, the balance within it. And we talk about the maturity in the operations. So the operation need to ensure certain depths in their capability, in their resource, right? Like 10 years down the road, when I look at it, my operation is very thin. It will be able to manage all the operations for the organization itself. Yeah, so it's very important to have certain balance when adopting AI and the people.
Your comment about resource fluidity is very key, right? So what you need to do is to get your specialists to build capability in the organization, but by bringing up the other people to become, we used to use the term super user everywhere, right? So that you'd have people in different teams in the organization who could be the people you go to, and you bring them, and they're the people that would then do the training of everything else of their own teammates. It's no different to any other project, right? But you need to make sure this is a part of the plan, right? That whole change, the organizational change program, that has disappeared from any planning I've seen in any major transformation for quite a while, has to come in even more now, right? It's that way of getting everyone on the journey, not just the technology teams. And this is not technology for technology's sake. This is for the business. This, again, I keep going back to that.
Yes. I mean, this is the value of people, right? So the most valuable people, in my opinion, are those that can connect three things. They can connect business, risk, and technologies together.
Yeah, 100%. That ability to translate between the three and bring it all together, but actually all the different stakeholders, because every one of them has a different way of talking, a different language. That's key. And again, we talked about AI amplifying the problem previously. This will do it even more, right? Because if someone starts talking about different parts of models and the different way they're going to actually handle the data, are they going to use supervised or unsupervised learning and all that sort of thing, and no one understands what the hell you're talking about, like they're not going to get it. Right. This is one where I actually have to help you with the training of that model with the labels versus one where it's going to teach itself. Right. It really basics, but it's really important to get out there. And also it means that someone goes, oh, I can help. That's the other part. I think that's the one, everyone wants to help them when their company's more successful. It's just, if you don't give them the opportunity to, they get, oh, what am I here for? Right.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, let's finish our today podcast with two final questions. I will add my perspective after yours. Right. First, 2 or 3 years from now, what does successful AI in a bank actually look like, in your opinion?
We're not talking about it. It's there. All right. I think, again, this is no different to any of the different technology innovation eras in the world, right? Including when they brought the first engines in and the first steam engines and all those different bits and pieces, looms, all that. People talk, oh, wow. Now they don't talk about that. It's just there. It's a part of the woodwork. It's a part of what you do day to day.
Yes, that's just my perspective as well. It's no longer another side project, POC or demo, it becomes part of the operations. And what I truly believe is when AI becomes invisible, it will become indispensable.
I like that.
Yeah. Second questions. What's the one piece of advice that you would like to give to the leader taking their team through an AI-driven transformation?
Look, again, it's about knowing what your job is, all right? Roles and responsibilities need to be very clear. And again, this is no different to any other transformation. Make sure everyone understands what they're doing. And to realize that when it goes live the first time, that first launch, that's not the finish line. That's the beginning, right? That's the next part of it, which is going to continually evolve along. Like, if you look at how machine learning is put together, it's not about, you implement it and then you walk away. It's about you've got to support and you've got to retrain, you've got to adjust, and different market influence will have one thing. It could be a different system that comes in, different product, maybe a new regulation comes in. These things mean that the system has to continually evolve and evolves faster, which is what the difference is between now, where you don't have AI involved in this side of things. People sort of say a bit more stagnant. This will now keep going. Every quarter there will be a change. And it's, again, how do you do that? And that's how do you get people involved? And you need to have that as part of your strategy. So you're continually looking at that. There's a term called model drift. You've got to maintain and watch for that, because that will be another issue. And the other one is bias, right? AI will amplify bias if you don't manage it. So you need to look for it. So the information, where it's coming from, how it looks, and all those sort of things, you've got to worry about that. And I think, again, it comes back to governance of data, but it's really important to watch for that and to continually watch for that. Because if you start isolating somebody because they're in a province which maybe there was a storm, which meant their insurance went up, and then you unfairly treat those people because of that, that's a problem. And you could then become seen as from a banking perspective, you could be seen as a bad bank for that region, right? Whereas if you maintain and always say there's something going on there, you can go do something about it. And I think that's important. And I think the other one is always, again, get the right stakeholders involved.
Yes, yeah. My one piece of advice would be don't start with the model. Don't start with drawing the finish line.
Yeah.
Start with the problem. Yeah, if the business problem is clear, it's real, and the data is usable, and the ownership is clear, I think the technology part will jump in and they will have much better chance to complete and finish it for you.
If you don't know what you're trying to fix, then how do you fix it?
Yeah. Yes. Right.
Very good.
Anthony, thank you very much. That was a very great conversations. If there's one takeaway from today, is that AI in banking or in any organizations only create values when it's implemented well, with the right foundation, right sponsorship, right controls, and the right people around it. Thank you again for joining us today. And thanks to everyone watching and listening to TechviCast. See you next time. Bye.
Thanks.